think everybody that was in the waiting room is here, and people will start to trickle in still over the first few minutes of the roundtable today. I just wanted to thank you, everybody, for coming and welcome you. Jennifer will be joining us, but she'll be just a little bit late. So she asked us just to go ahead and get started. And so today our topic is, how do I know if I have a possibility of an invention and what do I do about it? So we've invited Rocky Gibbons with Tech Launch Arizona here today to talk to us about that, and for you guys to ask your questions and kind of just have a conversation around that topic. Thank you, Rocky, so much for coming.
Thanks, Amy. I appreciate you inviting me to talk about this topic. So I guess maybe I can tell you a little bit about Tech Launch Arizona and what my role is within Tech Launch. And then we can jump into the topic. And I understand that this is an open discussion, so feel free to jump in and ask questions, or if you have any comments, thoughts, I welcome all of those. So my name is Rocky Gibbons, as Amy mentioned, and I'm the Director of Intellectual Property and Licensing for Tech Launch Arizona. I recognize some names on here already, so I know that there's a few people that we're working with. So Tech Launch is responsible for managing all of the intellectual property that's generated at the university. So we definitely cover BIO5 as well. And we're here as a resource. We're a service that doesn't cost the faculty anything. So when you do have ideas or inventions or things that you're thinking about as you're going along on your research path, we're available to talk with you about what those inventions might be, what your research is all about, and find ways to help bring them to the world and create larger impact. So there's, obviously multiple ways that the university accomplishes this. A lot of it is through your publications. But the other path, if you want patients to benefit, or the taxpayers or the public to actually benefit from an invention that you've developed, it's helpful to have some sort of protection in the way of patents or copyright or something, mainly because companies need that incentive in order to want to invest millions and millions of dollars into an invention to get it to the marketplace. So that's why TLA exists. It's very much aligned with the goals of the university and the mission of the university, in that, there's multiple ways that we can help advance our fields and advance research for the benefit of the public, right? That's kind of what the university is all about. And Tech Launch, certainly plays a role in that by bringing the commercialization side of things. Doesn't mean that you have to protect everything. And I guess that's where we talk about, what is an invention, and, when is it appropriate to move forward with these things. And I guess I'll say, we don't expect faculty to know. It's kind of a tough question to answer sometimes. You're doing your research, and how do I know when I've got an invention? I'd say contact us when you think you're onto something interesting, when you've discovered something new that's useful. And it doesn't have to have, as great impact in terms of, you're not curing cancer necessarily, although some of you are working on that. It could be just an invention that is a research tool. You've developed something in your lab that's really helpful to you to accomplish the work that you're trying to accomplish. There may be other folks at other universities or even within U of A that might find that useful. It could even be a software that you've developed. And we do receive software from, folks that are doing research in engineering or optical sciences or the biomedical sciences. So even those things that are useful to you that you've had to develop to help yourself in research, could be something that could be commercialized and made available to the larger public. So I guess my message would be, if you're excited about something you've discovered, chances are someone else is going to be excited and TLA is going to be interested in at least hearing about it and seeing how we might be able to help you move it forward. Does anybody have any thoughts or questions at this point? Oh, go ahead, Julie.
Hi, thank you very much. This is really interesting to hear about. Could you give some examples of technology that's been developed related to the biological sciences? For example, any researchers who've worked in, animal laboratory animals that have then, brought something to do with that to fruition?
Yes, I mean, so you said through laboratory animals specifically?
Yeah. So for example, if somebody has, been developing, a animal model, a mouse model of cancer, Parkinson's disease, and they've found that there's a certain way to target a gene with a drug or, to knock down that gene. Are there any examples of that?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, in what you said, there are probably multiple inventions in and of itself. So, we have faculty that are on campus that are working on doing exactly that, where they've identified compounds that are inhibiting a target or interacting with that target to produce a desired result. And actually, there's a center, hopefully most of you are aware of, the Arizona Drug Discovery Center, that has also formed, led by the College of Pharmacy, but they work with all, parts of the university. So we often have faculty that, know the pathway for a particular gene, really understand the mechanism of action, know how they might want to inhibit it, but have no way of actually inhibiting that particular target. And so there are resources on campus to help you do screens. The College of Pharmacy acquired a library that you can do some screens. They can also help with developing assays. And then if you do have hits in your, from a screen, and you're kind of moving it to that next level and you want to develop it further, they also have resources available to help you along that path. And resources, what I mean by that is they have the library, they have people with, the chemistry background that's needed for small molecule work. I don't know if they're doing anything with peptides. There are other folks on campus that, if you're interested in working in peptides, that might be able to help you with that. I hope that answers your question, Julie.
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's very helpful to be aware of all these resources. Thank you.
Yeah, and then I'll mention a couple of other resources that are available through TLA. So, we have had faculty come to us that sort of have done a screen and know what the compounds need to look like, but they're not yet novel compounds, right? They're just library hits. We do have funding available within our office that we control, and it's called asset development funding, that we can put towards then further advancing your compounds. This kind of funding is often difficult to find through federal resources. Because it's not quite basic research and translational work. It kind of falls in that valley of death. So we do have funding available, and the funds are typically anywhere from, it's not a ton of money. It could be anywhere from $30,000 to $60,000, and it really just depends on what is necessary to advance it. You can use that funding to use CROs to perform some of the work for you. So if there's some assays that you need to have run and it's not within your lab, that's perfectly fine. You can also use that funding to partner with the ACDD, which is the Arizona Center for Drug Discovery. They have some funding available, but again, they're usually looking for you to have some grant support. But if you don't have that, we've been partnering with ACDD as well on some of those things. And then going back to your question, Julie, on, about different inventions. So you mentioned mouse models. So if you have developed a mouse model that is new, is not otherwise available, that you think would be helpful to others for research, we do work with companies that can make those mice broadly available. So your lab doesn't have to maintain the mice, and doesn't have to deal with, all the MTAs and all the other things that go along with shipping and providing those mice. So we can do license agreements to companies, not only for mouse models, but I mean, if you have plasmids that, people keep bugging you about, they're asking, hey, can you send this to me? We can do a license to a company that will take that on and take that burden off of you, and then provide royalties back to the university that we then share with you. So you can make it available and you get some funding back, to continue to be able to put it towards whatever it is that you want to use it for.
Great. Thank you very much. Very helpful.
Yep, absolutely. I'm trying to think what else to mention to you guys. I guess if you're sending out materials, we're there to help you with that as well, to do the MTAs. We do outgoing MTAs. And then if you're working on grants where you need some help with writing some of the commercialization language in your grants, we are available to help you with that as well. More and more we're seeing that federal grants are asking, what is the commercial pathway for this? What's the plan? What strategy do you have in place? Do you have any intellectual property? We can help you answer a lot of those questions.
I've gone ahead and put Rocky's information and the TLA URL for their website in the chat in case anyone wants to jot that down. Does anyone have any more questions or anything else they'd like to talk about with Rocky?
I guess Let me ask you guys a question then. When you're doing your research, are you thinking about inventions, or are you that's not on your radar? Is that something that maybe your graduate students bring up with you? Or I'm just curious to know if that's, your thinking and how you look at the research that you're doing.
No one?
No one. So maybe you're not thinking about it, which is okay. I know that some of you at least are thinking about it, because I know, I'm not going to put anybody on the spot, but I know some of you are already working with our office, which is great. And you've got things that, we're moving forward. And I guess, hopefully you guys do hear about TLA. We try to do a lot of press releases around the activity that we have going on at the university, where we've had compounds that are developed that are now, going into clinical trials. So Julie, actually you asked, and I don't know if I answered this, has that ever happened at the university where we've developed something and it's actually out there in the world? We absolutely have. In the biomedical area, but this actually came from optical sciences. Jim Schregerling at the College of OpSci developed a multifocal lens that allows you to, have both near and far sight. So, there's bifocal, but this lens actually allows you to see sort of that middle distance. So you don't have to worry about reading glasses, and you don't have to worry about, having glasses for far vision. And these are implanted into your eye. We license this technology to Alcon, and they have been making it available throughout the world. And so we're starting to see a lot of that technology be out there. So that's one example. We've also spun out quite a few companies around, I don't know if you've heard of Avery Therapeutics. Avery has developed a cardiac patch where they've taken a scaffold and they've seeded it with cardiac cells. And this scaffold actually beats by itself. And so it's there to repair damage to the heart. So you can actually, surgically implant that scaffold and repair damage to the heart that you otherwise wouldn't be able to address. We have some anti-fibrotic drugs that have also been licensed out to a startup company. I'm trying to think of other examples for you guys, but it could be anywhere from a drug to a device. We have a lot of things that are out there that are in development. Any questions from you guys about patents or copyright or anything? Anything you've ever wondered?
I have another question. I was waiting to see if anyone else had questions. I think doing basic research, it's very hard to envision getting to this step, going from the bench to actually developing something that one could market. How does your office form or help the PI to form relationships with companies to develop the product, market the product, and then does the university retain ownership? I mean, how does that process work?
Yeah, and actually, and thank you for asking that. I should talk a little bit about the process with you guys. But to answer your question more specifically about, how do we work with companies and help you work with companies? We actually have a marketing group within our office. So when we have inventions that are disclosed to us, we do targeted marketing. We have access to certain databases and services where they're looking for university technologies. Companies subscribe to these databases and these platforms. And it's sort of a matchmaking service almost, where companies will post things that they're looking for. And then we try to map that up with technologies that we have, or we are also posting our technologies that allow companies to be able to look through what's available and reach out to us. And believe it or not, we actually do get a lot of hits from that, where people reach out and say, hey, can you give me a little bit more information? Do you have any publications or publicly available information that you can share? And then a lot of those conversations in advance to getting on a phone call, or a Zoom with those companies and learning both about the company, and then they get a chance to learn about our technology. So we've had some licenses result from that. We also, depend on faculty contacts. Sometimes you have former graduate students that are now in companies that we can call upon. They really understand your research, and they can help, bring it to sort of the business folks within the companies. We've had success with that as well. We as TLA, we attend conferences, not so much this year, although we've been on Zoom conferences this year, where we meet with companies that, specifically want to meet with us because they're looking for technologies in a specific area. So we've made connections that way. And it seems like this would be difficult, but it does actually bear fruit, and we have had successes. So just to give you a sense of the pipeline and, what the amount of technologies that we work on. So we receive anywhere from 250 to 290 inventions a year from the university all across campus. And we license, I'm going to give you some preliminary numbers because we just finished FY21. We did 124 licenses this year, and 68 of them were exclusive licenses. And what that means is those are the high impact licenses where we've licensed potential drugs, devices, and the rest of the licenses are either copyright licenses. So we do a lot around content as well. So if there's content that you've developed, even questionnaires that are really useful in research, we've had a lot of success with. So one example is we have a survey or a questionnaire. It was actually started off as a paper questionnaire that could be used for stratifying patients in clinical studies. And it's called the ASEX questionnaire. And we license that probably multiple times a year for, tens of thousands of dollars that go back to that lab and go back to that investigator. And you wouldn't have thought that just even a simple questionnaire, but it's the standard for what is used in clinical trials by large pharmaceutical companies. So we have licenses with companies like Pfizer, Sanofi, Lilly. I mean, I think pretty much name it, any big pharma and medium-sized companies as well are utilizing that survey. So, when you think about inventions, you don't really know when you've happened upon something until you kind of stop along the way of your research and ask those questions that, hey, is this something that could be useful to someone else? What's the utility of this? So even something as simple as a survey that one of our faculty from College of Medicine, ended up being actually a great tool for industry. And then going back to Julie, what you asked about the process really starts with a conversation with you guys. I mean, when you have research that you're working on, all we expect is that you give us a call and say, hey, I have something, I'm not sure if it's valuable or if it's even anything to consider as an invention. Can we talk about it? And then what we look for is you just talk about your research and tell us what you're working on. And in those conversations, we can often pick out, hey, I think you're onto something here. Why don't we talk a little bit more about that? Can you send me some background information? And let's see if there's something there that we can protect. And we never expect faculty to actually draft any patent applications, right? So we're not expecting you to do any of that work. If we do determine that there's something there and something worth moving forward with in terms of protecting it through a patent, we get outside law firms involved. And a lot of these attorneys, themselves have PhDs in those respective areas. So you're talking to people that understand what your research is, and they're working with lots of investigators doing just that. So they often are pretty up to speed on the field and where it is. And they draft the applications based on your manuscripts or grant applications, whatever you can provide us, and then based on a conversation that we have. And then they turn around a draft and we all review it. You review it and make sure it's scientifically sound. And it will have all the legal jargon in it. But we wade through that. And then we get it filed. And then we work with you to continue with that patent prosecution. But again, what we look for from you is what you already do, which is your scientific expertise. We're not looking for you to know any of the legal side of things. That's what the attorney is there for. And that's what your licensing manager is there for. And I guess I should mention, so BIO5 is a little bit different in that, because you're an institute and not a college, we have licensing managers that are dedicated to specific colleges. So anywhere from, ag to College of Medicine and engineering, all across campus, we have licensing managers in sort of the IP producing colleges that, can work with you. So you have one point of contact. And I can provide that list as well. So if you're wondering, who's my licensing manager, I can provide that list to you so you know who to contact. And it really is just pick up the phone and call them, versus feeling like you have to start with a form. Eventually, we'll ask you to fill out a 2-page form when we think that there is something there. And all that form does is say, okay, what is it? Who made it? Who are the inventors? And how is it funded? And those are really the 3 things that we focus on. So we make it really easy. And we ask how it's funded is because the feds actually really care about how their funding is used. And so they want us to report any inventions that come out of their funding and let them know that we have an invention. And they want to know what we're doing with it. So when you close out your grants and they ask you that question, did any IP come out of this? Your record should match our record. So we're also reporting to the government, just like you are, that you've created this invention. And more, I think the federal government wants to fund things that are translational, that will actually result in something. So the more patents and more you can show that, you've actually done something with this basic research in the way of it might benefit the public one day, the stronger your grant becomes as well. So I see that there might be some questions. I'm going to peek really quick. Many of the students, many of the researchers are students. Would I have any suggestions for things they should think about as they're making their own discoveries and figuring out their future careers in science? Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think that having your students think about inventions and inventing and commercialization early on is a benefit to them. Not all students, especially in the recent years, are necessarily wanting to go the academic route. So there might be opportunities that our office has, if you're open to introducing your student to that side of things, to actually work with us. We have internships not only for entrepreneurship. So if you have students that are interested in eventually forming a company or doing something in that area, we have internships available that are paid for them to be able to do that over the summer or even during the year. It just depends on what you're willing to also have your student be able to do. And then we also have opportunities for them to help us with the earlier part of the process. So anytime we have inventions that are disclosed to our office, we do deep dives. And we look at the market and whether it's patentable. So we train students to be able to do that. And that's a good skill set, I think, to have for students that are even going to follow the academic route, is for them to be thinking about what makes what I have an invention and what makes it patentable. How do I think about the market? Now, we don't expect faculty to do those things, but it's helpful for you to have that information so that at least you're armed with additional information that will help you in your research careers as you think about the things that you're working on. And then I would say, I would encourage your students to think outside the box and, think about the broad applicability of the research that they're doing. Oftentimes I think when we're doing research in a specific area, and by the way, I've been a researcher in a past life as well, you get tunnel vision, right? You only think about this particular pathway that you're looking at, and you don't zoom out and think about, well, what is the true application of this? How is this actually going to help someone? What's the clinical use of this? And maybe I should be thinking about the clinical implications of it. I mean, I think that not only helps people conduct better research, but it also opens your eyes to, what the possibilities might be for your research program. Obviously, publications are bread and butter, but those publications can also have a greater impact, aside from just advancing your field, but actually having that turn into a product someday. And it happens all the time. I know it seems so far-fetched sometimes that, that something you're working on could actually be a product on the market, but it happens all the time in university research. Nearly every drug, I would say at least 80% of all drugs that are on the market had their start somewhere at a university. Taxol was definitely one. Warfarin. I can probably name a few others, but those are, some very recognized names that had a start at a university and really wouldn't have been possible had it not been for researchers doing that basic research. I actually have a slide that I normally show that shows all the different products that have come from a university, and it's really interesting because things that you just would have never imagined coming out of a university. So actually, let me share that slide if you'll humor me. So all of these inventions at some point got their start at a university. Even the Honeycrisp apple started at the University of Minnesota. And Google, right, that we use every day, started at Stanford. Symphonia is actually one of ours, and it's a local company that develops software for identifying adverse drug interactions for people with chronic illnesses that are on a lot of different things. Lyrica. I mean, all of these things that you're seeing up here came out of a university at some point. And CRISPR, obviously, that everybody I think knows, that definitely had its start at a university. So, and these are just a few of the examples. This isn't even everything that has come out of a university. Let's see.
Well, that's really great. That's really cool.
Yeah.
We have Jennifer with us. I just wanted to say hello. And then we also have one more question in the chat, basically asking, do we have a list of licensing managers that we could provide to our members?
Yeah, absolutely. I can drop that into the link here shortly.
Okay, thank you.
I think, Rocky, that one question that BIO5 members frequently have is who should they go to? Should they go to their home colleges, or, particularly if they're in a college where the majority of the college, their research that they do is a little bit different than, say, a BIO5 members. What's the process for finding out who they should be working with?
Yeah, I mean, ideally you go to your licensing manager in the particular college. But that doesn't mean that you have to do that. I mean, you're welcome to reach out to me as well, and I can connect you to the right person. So we don't even expect you to know, who to necessarily go to. I'm going to drop this link in, and this is actually our full staff directory. And you'll see that there'll be some folks on here that have the title of licensing manager, and it'll say whether they're College of Ag and Life Sciences, so CALS, or engineering, which is Bob Sleeper. Laura Silva covers College of Science, and Todd McCauley is CALS. Lewis Humphreys covers software for us, so he's agnostic to college, and he can work with anybody. So if you have software, then he's the guy. And then for College of Medicine, it's Mitch Graffio. And we have another person that's in the College of Medicine, but also covers UAHS broadly, is Katie Coons, and she just joined. And Jennifer, I'll make sure I introduce Katie to you. So she just started about a week ago, and she's covering the health sciences. So, College of Medicine and all the different colleges, including Phoenix, is what she would cover. So yeah, so reach out to any of them directly. And like I said, you can just send an email or call one of them if you just want to chat. Eventually we'll have you fill out a form, but that's, we try really hard not to be bureaucratic. That's not the start of our process. It's always, let's just chat about what you've got going on. And maybe you're not ready to disclose today, but you might be ready, a week, a month, or a year from now. And we do keep checking back with you too and seeing, hey, how is the research going? How are things progressing? So we definitely want to have more of a kind of a relationship with you guys. And then maybe I can drop a link in here for our asset development as well. And then I wanted to show you something that I guess is not that much of a focus for everyone, but certainly helps. Let's see, let me drop this link in for asset development. This is the funding I mentioned earlier, where there are small grants available to move your inventions closer the market. So we fund key experiments that are needed that you couldn't otherwise fund through sort of a traditional, federal grant or foundation funds. Let's see, what was I going to show you? I've already forgotten. Oh, I was going to show you our revenue distribution. I usually get this question, what happens to the royalties that the university receives when we do a license? And I will show that slide to you. Okay. So the lion's share, you can tell, goes to the contributor, which is the inventor, which would be you. And then there's also a discretionary account. And this discretionary account is essentially, it's an account that you control that can be used towards research. I mean, you can buy laptops. It just has to be on university business. You can send students to conferences or, use it for yourself for conferences. It's just whatever, you can spend for university business. And so this revenue distribution policy is 3-tiered. And, it bottoms out at basically 30% to the contributor. So you never get less than 30%. Obviously, as the numbers get larger, the percentages become more meaningful. So obviously 30% of multi-million is a lot more than 50% of 100,000. So, this, and believe it or not, there are faculty that are in this, this bucket here at the university that we're sending really nice checks to. And this contributor share, if I didn't mention it before, is personal income. So it actually gets even reported as on your taxes, all right? So you have to pay taxes on it. But it's, you can spend it on anything. It doesn't have to be on university business. This could be, you can remodel your kitchen or buy lunch, I guess, depending on how big your royalty check is that quarter. But again, our faculty don't worry about this too much, but I always like to mention it because, this is sort of the other upside, because you're not at the university to create inventions, right? That's not your role. You're here to teach students and publish and do research. But as a part of that, along the way, university does want to reward you for making discoveries and having the foresight to actually move it forward and doing something about it. Companies don't have anything. Usually you get maybe a plaque, maybe a mug that says, hey, I got a patent or I created this product, but universities typically reward financially and, other ways. So anything else, any questions or any comments?
Rocky, I just want to give a shout out to your team. And second, please just, get in touch, with Rocky if you don't know, or whomever. If you can't figure out who it is, they'll direct you. I've had many conversations over the years, just sitting down and discussing kind of the whole plan of the research program and going forward, and having a licensure manager go, but wait, what about that? Have you thought about that? And, it might be something that I hadn't actually even thought was interesting or patentable, and it is. And I guess the other comment I'd make is that, certainly there's differences between the agencies. I think all the federal agencies are interested in getting more interested, but I have a DoD grant, a medical research program DoD grant, and they are very interested. I get calls all the time from the program manager wanting to know how the intellectual process is going. And when one of our patents was issued not too long ago, that was definitely a milestone that they considered important and continuing to fund this project.
Yeah, absolutely. And if it's okay, Jennifer, can I share some metrics for BIO5?
Oh, please do. Yeah.
That we recently shared. I don't have the Q4 numbers, so they're going to be better, but I can show you the Q3 and past years as well. So this is what the activity for BIO5 looks like. And I've highlighted FY21 Q3. So we'll be reporting out the Q4 numbers, which I think we've actually provided to you already, Jennifer, but let us know if we haven't. So anyway, so you can see that, obviously BIO5 has a lot of active members in commercialization. So there were 124 patents that were filed, and we had 15 issued. The reason that you see, the number being less for issued is these are patent applications that were filed probably 3-4 years ago. So from the time that you file a patent application to when it actually gets issued, it could be anywhere from 3 to 5 years. So there is a lag, but we are seeing an increase, as we go along. I think for U of A, for all of our patents, we were ranked number 28 in the country, which was a huge jump for us. We used to be, I think in the think we were ranked 50 or 60 even. And so we jumped quite a few paces to get to 28. And I think this next year, we're going to see a jump again because we had the highest number of issued patents this past year. I think the total for the university was over 100 this year, which is great. And then you can see invention disclosures were down in Q3. This number, I think, has changed quite a bit in Q4, which tends to be our busiest time. But you guys will see those final numbers because we'll release them. But typically, it's in the last couple of years, it's been kind of in this area. We did see a downturn because of COVID, both last year and then this fiscal year. But I expect that will bounce back now that, labs are fully functioning and we're going to be back. Everyone's going to be back on campus soon enough with students and, sort of the normal level of activity that we had in years past. So anyway, I think you guys are doing well. And I think you'll continue to, and hopefully you see those BIO5 newsletters and also TLA newsletters where we're talking about startups and highlighting those stories. A lot of those are coming out of BIO5 investigators as well. So it's not just about the numbers, there's some good stories in there too.
Mm-hmm. So I have another question, if it hasn't already come up already, which is, especially for our junior investigators and junior faculty, what's the university's feeling about the worth of pursuing intellectual property in terms of promotion and tenure? And what's been done to increase the perceived value of these activities at a university level? And I see Philip Gutroff just popped on as one of our aforementioned junior faculty working on intellectual property. Do you have any concerns or questions or comments on this?
Well, I do feel that it's probably not really that appreciated for tenure. It feels like there's not that much support in our college for people who pursue intellectual property. It's recognized and it's like, yeah, it's great, but I don't think that many faculty members that sit in the committees really appreciate the amount of work that goes into it and also the impact that it creates. I think it's probably in the academic community, it's not super appreciated how much this comes back to the university as well. If we create successful products, if we have press releases that put the name of the university into everyone's mind and in front of their screens. So I think personally, I find it very rewarding being involved in these processes. But I know that many people don't necessarily think this way. So yeah, I don't know if anyone's in here that can comment on it, but maybe I'm preaching to the choir. I don't know.
Yeah, and I guess I can comment a little bit. I agree with you. I think that it's not weighted the same in the tenure process as other service and publications are. And I know the university's been trying to get better at this, and maybe we're a little bit further ahead than other universities because most universities still don't weigh it into their tenure decisions. And I think here, I know that a lot of the colleges are at least willing to look at a body of work from a faculty member, and TLA provides letters, and we have done so for folks that are up for tenure. So it's not, you can't equate an invention disclosure the same as a publication. So it ends up being very kind of objective when you're looking, or subjective when you're looking at it. It's really looking at the full body of work and the impact. You could have 5 disclosures, but someone who's had a disclosure that actually resulted in a license is different than someone that had a license that actually then created a product that's on the market. And so I know that the colleges will look at the full impact, And so we have written letters to talk about the full commercialization outlook for a particular faculty member. I don't know how much they've weighed that ultimately as the committee, but I know that, you know, it's at least something that people are thinking about, and it's at least on their radar.
Is there any activity that TLA does to kind of lobby for successful translation? I mean, I completely agree. You know, if you have 100 patents but nothing gets licensed and has any impact other than, you know, being a piece of paper, I think that's clear. But for, you know, activities that result in startup companies that draw in some money and or, you know, other impactful work, is there any kind of lobbying that the TLA does? Because I think, you know, once this becomes more attractive also for your tenure decision, I think a lot of people, especially the younger investigators, would put more effort and emphasis on translational work.
Yeah, I mean, I think yes, TLA does. I don't know if I would say lobby, but we definitely make sure that it's on the radar for deans and department heads. And so we do have a lot of conversations, especially, by the way, in College of Engineering, which I think, Philip, you're in engineering, correct? Yeah, so we, you know, with Mark Van Dyke being on board, he's very supportive of commercialization. He himself has a lot of patents. And has done startup companies. So we're partnering with him a lot. And then Dean Hahn is obviously very engaged. And there are other, you know, deans and department heads. And obviously, you know, Jennifer Barton also is very supportive of TLA. So I think, yeah, I mean, we're definitely out there getting it on, you know, people's radar and showing what faculty are doing. We do a lot of press releases to bring recognition to the college and the department. You know, deans care about those sorts of things. So any good press and any attention we can bring, you know, we try to sort of raise the profile of our faculty that way. But yeah, I mean, it's challenging, you're right, because at the end of the day, you know, publications, you know, still are, you know, the focus when it comes to looking at tenure, promotion, and, you know, ultimately what gets faculty's attention. So we are trying to change that on campus and show that, you know, the impact can be looked at a lot of different ways.
Great.
And I guess on the topic of recognition, there is another initiative that we have that we're working on. And I guess I'll tell you guys, I'm a little bit jumping the gun here, but since we're going to be talking about it soon enough anyway, we're looking at giving, you know, these sort of challenge coins, these medallions for issued patents to faculty. So for all issued patents in any given year, we'll be recognizing faculty inventors at sort of college level or department level award events. I know that most colleges have at least one event a year where they're recognizing faculty for research. And we're lobbying to get patents as another recognition at these events so that, you know, they'll actually receive a really nice medallion, sort of the, I don't know if you've seen the president's coins or the challenge coins, again, to acknowledge that effort and give it a little bit more weight.
Awesome. Those sound like great things. I think the university's come a long way, and all universities have, but I think U of A has made a special effort over the last, say, 10 years, especially in really pushing for considering this to be part of the scholarly activity. I see we have a question in the chat. Rocky, can you see it or I can read it?
Yeah, sure. What are the main reasons why UA patents aren't issued? Can they be submitted, you know, or resubmitted or one bite at the apple? So UA patents are issued. It's just, I think you're seeing kind of a lag. You know, we file something like 300 applications, you know, a year. And then by the time we get to actually issuance, you know, it's 3 to 5 years later. So it can be quite a long process before we get to issuance. So I think the reason we're not seeing much higher numbers and why we didn't see them before is tech transfer and commercialization was kind of an underfunded effort at U of A until TLA was formed. And those of you that have been here, you know, at least 10 years will remember that TLA was formed about 8-9 years ago. Before that, we did have a tech transfer office, but they were just so under-resourced that they didn't have, you know, much of a patent budget to actually file on anything. And because it takes so many years for patents to issue, you know, it's in the last few years that we've really started to see an uptick on those issued patents. So I think it's not that UA patents applications aren't issuing. It's just we need that, you know, pipeline that we've finally developed. And so I think we'll see that change a lot over the next several years. Charlene, I hope that answers your question.
Great. I think that's a yes.
Yep.
Great. Well, any other last questions? We're reaching the top of the hour. Great. All right. Well, Rocky, thank you so much for being here today. Amy, thank you so much for leading us. It's great to see everybody, and I go back and think about what you have, and yeah, let's get those disclosure numbers back up.
Yes. Thank you, everyone, and thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you, Rocky.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.